Hello, everyone. I'm Josh RACHLIS, and welcome to Entertainment 411, your insight into the Canadian entertainment industry. Our goal is to shine a spotlight on those who work in front of and behind the scenes. Today, our guest is acting teacher and coach Marvin Karon of Acting for the Camera. As an actor, he has appeared in Charlie Bartlett, Blindness, The Rocker and Dr. Cabbie, as well as The Apprentice. First, let's take a look at a short video on Marvin's view on taking classes, and then we'll welcome him to the show.
My objective, my game here is not to keep you in perpetual classes. My game here is to get you camera ready so that when the opportunity arises for you to compete for a role, you get the role. And you are so incredibly efficient and effective on set that, oh my gosh, you're called back in to read again and again and again. You're invited back to the party again and again and again. That to me is what a good class should be all about. Getting you to the point where you don't need a class. And if I play my cards right, and if you guys do your job right, hopefully it won't be long before that's the case.
Hello, Marvin.
Hello, Josh. Nice to be with you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us. I liked your video telling people that your goal is to make sure they don't need your classes anymore. I'm not sure that's the best financial plan for you, but...
Well, it's not. But again, I think acting coaches should be in the business. I mean, you know, there's that old Chinese proverb, give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish, he eats for the rest of his life. And, you know, I think the best learning, the most learning I've ever done, I mean, I've had some great coaches in my time, but the most learning for me was on set. So that's the idea, to get you into a position through classes and workshops where you're just booking roles one after the other, and you're learning everything you need to learn on a set.
Wow, sounds good. Well, I've got lots of questions, but before we jump into the questions, just a quick note for those watching. Marvin is offering eBoss members 15% off his workshops that we just mentioned. So visit the deals section of the eBoss Canada site for details. So now people are saving money, and then they're going to not need your classes anymore. We're going to have to start a GoFundMe.
I'll retire. I'll just retire.
That's true. Just live, and maybe you can do like, I don't know, community theater. What do retired people do?
That's an idea.
Sounds good. So normally my interviews, like when I do my own thing, I'm sort of freewheeling, but they keep me reined in here with actual good questions. So I'll be reading those, and maybe I'll go off on my little tangents, but we'll see what happens.
Sure.
So the first question is, what was your journey to becoming an acting teacher / coach?
Was born and raised in Hamilton and went to university. And then my parents were very eager and keen and anxious to see me become a lawyer. But I wrote the law boards, and they demonstrated that I had an intelligence slightly above that of vegetable life. So law school was out the door. And I got into the National Theatre School of Canada at the same time that I was applying to law schools. And I went, and Colin Feore and Shauna McKenna, two big Stratford stars and people who've become wonderful friends. They were with me. Shauna was a year behind me. Colin was 2 years behind me while I was there. I got out before you were born, and pursued an acting career both here in Canada and in Los Angeles. I spent 4 years, and we're all praying for those folks down there in Los Angeles with what's going on down there now with the fires. But I spent 4 years there, came back to Canada, and pursued a career here for a while, and continue to do so. But I got sidetracked. I went to teachers college, got a teaching degree, fell in love with teaching, and pursued a master's degree and was going to go on for my doctorate in education. But then I got sidetracked with a charitable nonprofit organization that I started with Canadian theatre legend and acting icon R.H. Thompson, called Shakespearean's Performing Arts, which goes into schools and demystifies Shakespeare for kids. And at about the same time, I was teaching out of Equity Showcase Theatre. I was teaching teens and that led from there to broadening the base. And in addition to teens, I started teaching adults, and now I coach both for privately and online, and for audition prep, and I do classes for anyone from the ages of 14 to 70.
Wow. So 71-year-olds, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
Pack it in. That's
Yeah.
exciting. My dad has a PhD in education. I've never met another education PhD.
Well, I didn't, because I got sidetracked. I was gonna, but
right.
But I have the masters. I have the masters in education.
That's good enough. I'll cut you some slack for that or whatever. It's interesting. So it sounds like, yeah, like just my own thought here. Like if you're an actor, but you want to make sure you can feed yourself if you're not getting roles, you can combine it with something else. So you took your love of teaching and combine that with acting, and now you're sort of doing both, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Teaching demands a certain kind of performance. So, yeah, I mean, in the Shakespearean workshops I do for the charitable nonprofit, I mean, the kids don't know. They think I'm a Shakespearean star when I, let loose with some iambic pentameter. So it's all good.
Yeah. It's like being a superhero. They have no idea. They're like, what? Our teacher can do this? That's crazy. That's so exciting. A quick question, because I'm just like curious. Like, you were in LA and you came back to Canada. Why would you do that? Like, just because it's expensive there, or?
Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, my family was all here. I knew virtually. I mean, I made friends in LA, but my family and childhood friends were all here. And then what got me back to Canada, there was a woman I met while I was just visiting in the summer of, I think it was 86. And she was definitely rooted here. And we almost got married, but we didn't. And by the time we didn't, like 18 months had gone by, and everything that I did one of the first episodes of Knight Rider with the Hoff. And, my agents were really excited, and they said, oh my gosh, we've had people down here for years who have not gotten this kind of a break, because I was essentially the featured player in the episode. But I was gone for 18 months, and they really did not like that. So by the time I got back there, after the relationship sort of ended, they went really, really cold on me. So I hung in for a little while longer, and then I just saw the writing on the wall and came back to Canada, where, as I say, my friends and emotional support and family were, and I have no regrets, especially now with what's going on in America. Just the fires aside, I mean, in California, just everything that's going on in the States, I'm much more comfortable here in Canada.
Yeah, and like we were just saying before the show, I mean, everything's online now. Like, who knows where you have to be, and they shoot things everywhere, and it's all digital. And
absolutely. During the pandemic, I was running online classes. That's when my online classes started, and one of my students became a good friend, and we worked together online for a while. And then he emailed me a couple of years ago and said, I've got a nice role on The Crown that I'm auditioning for, and I could use some help for it. So we just hopped onto Zoom. I worked with him, and he sent me the loveliest note thanking me for the input, and told me how much it had helped him and stuff. And yeah, I mean, when I went to LA in the early 80s, that was it. I mean, if they didn't have this technology. I used to go to the UCLA library on Saturdays, because they would get the Globe and Mail. They were like a week old. They were mailed to them, but it was my little touch of home. Now, of course, you live in LA. I went over to the UK. I was doing Shakespeare workshops over there, and I go online. You can read the Globe, the Star, the New York Times. It's a totally different world.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, even 5 years ago, I was trying to I was researching, how could I do a podcast online, like live, like this or whatever. Technology wasn't even there. Like, it's very recent that we're able to just do this. It's very exciting.
Absolutely.
All right. Question number 2. At this rate, this will only be a 7-hour interview, so don't worry about it. What advice do you have for actors at the beginning of their career?
Again, it might sound self-serving, But I think in 2025, you've really got to stay on top of your game. It's so important to keep your instrument in tune. I am sure you and a lot of the people watching this interview have seen Casablanca, right? And you got Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman in the back of a cab that's supposed to be in Paris. And there's they've got it's the backdrop. They're nowhere near Paris, France. And our grandparents and great grandparents, they would buy that. They oh my gosh, look, Humphrey Bogart's in Paris with Ingrid Bergman. And in 2025, I mean, if the technology is so sophisticated, the audience is so sophisticated, their tastes and their eye is so sophisticated that you can't get away with that anymore. And it's the same with acting. I think today, acting demands, even more than it did when I graduated from the National Theatre School of Canada decades ago. You've got to be more sophisticated. You've got to be more in tune and in touch with your craft. You've got to be more on top of your craft. So that would be the number one piece of advice that I would give to young actors beginning their careers. And the second thing I would say is resilience. You're going to get way more no's in the business than yes, but you just got to keep plugging at it. And just never, ever, ever give up. Oh my gosh, she won an Oscar as Best Supporting Actress for that movie about Howard Hughes. I can't remember her name. I see the face, but she was talking about. I think she worked for Chuck E. Cheese or something like that, and she remembers. And she was an actress. She was auditioning, and one night she was off to her shift at Chuck E. Cheese, and she looks in the mirror and she thinks to herself, you could be 40 and doing this. And, is this what you're prepared to live with if this is your life? And she decided yes, and won an Academy Award. Your viewers are going to have to go online and
Kate Blanchett. I just
not
Googled.
Kate Blanchett. It wasn't
It's
Kate
not?
Blanchett.
It does
No,
say she won an Oscar for The Aviator.
No, it wasn't it was long before that. She was married to Malcolm McDowell. If you're on your computer, who was one of Malcolm McDowell's, and now she's married to Ted Danson.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. The brunette woman, Ted Danson wife.
Yes.
Mary Steenburgen.
That's it. You've got it. Ding, ding, ding. Gagne. Winner.
Oh.
Yes. Mary Steenburgen. Yes. Anyway, I would say two things that an actor who's just starting out the profession needs to know is you got to stay on top of your craft, and you got to be resilient. And one last thing, Ira Levy is a good friend of mine. He ran breakthrough films and television for many, many years. And it couldn't have been more than a month after I got to the National Theatre School of Canada. He went to the London Film School and trained there in the late 70s, early 80s. And we went out for lunch, and he said to me, "Do not be passive. Create your own opportunities." And I had no idea what he was talking about, but Shakespeareans, in addition to the in-class workshops we run after-hours programs for at-risk youth and summer programs for under-resourced kids. And there's a young woman who was with me about 10, 12 years ago. She is producing and directing her own films and winning awards for it. Mm-hmm. And she was a wonderful actor, and she took 1 or 2 or 3 of my classes. And boy, she got Ira's message to a T. Create your own opportunities. Do not be passive and waiting for parts to fall into your lap. So there's 3 very good bits of advice that I would offer. And
that's the advice I give to everyone. There's a good rant by Jason Alexander on Instagram where he's like, you got to make your own stuff. Yeah. And then I interviewed a woman recently who's, she's big in Baywatch and all this stuff back in the day. And now she just hired a writer, and she's producing her own movie, and she stars in it. Especially now. I mean, you could shoot a movie with your phone. Like, what are you doing?
Absolutely. Sit down, write it. If you can't write it, find somebody who can. and create your own stuff and put it on YouTube or whatever. I mean, there's just so many more. Again, comes back to what we were talking about off the top, the way technology has just exploded in terms of the opportunities it offers.
Yeah, when I was young, I hosted a community cable show, and that was the only way to reach people. And I had little clips of it. I'd mail my VHS tape to TV Ontario or something, and that's all you could do. But literally right now, you could do your own talk show. You could do TikToks. Like, there's no excuse. Like, yeah. And then that's what agents probably want to see as well. What are your followers? What's your content? What are you doing? Yeah. All right. Well, that sort of leads into our third question. How important is it for talent to have a demo reel?
Well, I got bad news and good news. The bad news is it's critical because, since COVID, before COVID for auditions, I'm with Maria at ETM, and, I would go and I would be in the room and I would go in, and now it's all done online, auditions and stuff. So casting directors, you've got to have a demo reel. So that's the bad news, that it's critically important. The good news is, again, we're just beating a dead horse here, but, you don't have to go into a studio and pay $5,000 to create a demo reel. You can shoot your own stuff and put something together. So, the technology is there. Go out and shoot something that you can have as a calling card to show casting directors, producers, directors what you can do. Absolutely essential. Yeah.
Just again, for the young kids, when I was in high school, I shot like a comedy show. It was my school project, but we had to have a video camera I borrowed from my friend, and then we would edit it. We'd plug the video camera into the VCR, and we'd like have to cut it back and forth. Like, you don't understand how hard it was. Like, you can literally just shoot on your phone now. Like, no excuses.
Absolutely.
You kids, you don't understand. All right. Question number 4. What's the biggest mistake that actors make when auditioning or when preparing for an audition?
We're talking about video clips here. You just mentioned the Seinfeld guy. Oh my God, I'm having a senior moment.
Jason Alexander George.
Bryan Cranston has a wonderful video which you can access on YouTube, and he talks about auditioning, and I'm paraphrasing here, but I highly recommend it. He talks about that, he started booking jobs when, instead of going in to a room to get the job, he just saw auditioning as an opportunity to perform. And if you love to act, then auditioning gives you an opportunity to perform. You're not being paid for it, but if it's for a union or even a non-union film or television role, you are being offered an opportunity to participate in a professional process. I think that would be the first thing I would say to young or even experienced actors auditioning for a job. Wendell Pierce, who played Bunk on The Wire, and he's starred in Treem, and he played Death of a Salesman. He was Willie Loman on Broadway, I think last year in Death of a Salesman. He was just on CBS Sunday morning, this past Sunday. And I wrote it down. He said, "Every audition for me is an opening and closing night, where I get to perform and say, this is what I would do with the material." So you're auditioning, stop looking at it as a power thing where those listening to you are judging your performance, and rather instead look at it as an opportunity to perform. The other thing that's point number 1 in terms of auditioning. Point number 2, and it was a mistake I made. I would go into auditions very soon after I got into the National Theatre School of Canada, and I thought, my gosh, I did so well. I remembered all the lines. Learning the lines is not enough, right? My Aunt Tilly could learn the lines. You get a parrot to learn the lines. You've got to get underneath the material. And it's the actors who come into the room and they've got something underneath the words, who tend to do best in auditions. So those are the two things I would say are crucial to auditioning effectively.
Yeah, and I'm a copywriter, so I would cast people for my commercials, and I'm also an actor, so it's interesting. And this is just like a personal thing. I think it's important to figure out what's the important thing in the line that needs to be said. Like if it's a commercial, you got to mention the detergent or whatever. But if there's some words in there that you could change, like if you just want to sort of improvise, like just make it your own. I don't know how much they'd get. Oh, you didn't get the exact word right. Like it's conveying the feeling, right? Like just figure out what are you supposed to be doing, and don't be like, oh, I have to say every exact syllable exactly what they typed, because you know.
You know, even in Shakespeare, Robin Phillips, the late great artistic director of our Stratford Festival from 1974 to 1980, he said, I mean, Shakespeare, that language is so elegant, it's so beautiful, it's so transcendentally exquisite. But he said, what's more important than the words, as wonderful as they are, is what's underneath the words, the emotions giving rise to those words. And if you can wrap your head around that notion, I think you can do very, very well in auditions.
Yeah, the subtext. If you can sort of say something, but you're giving it, you have an emotion opposite to what you're saying or something. There's a lot of interesting stuff you can do.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, this kind of almost we've answered it, but number 5, are there tips that you give to actors to help them stand out in their auditions?
Yeah. Couple of things to say about that. I think standing out in auditions is a blend of preparation and spontaneity. And that's kind of like a paradox, but you know, I think you've got to prepare, and then just let go and have confidence that, again, and this comes from, I think, taking classes and exercising that muscle, that acting muscle. And then you just have to have confidence that the process that you've worked so hard to develop works. Jack Nicholson, decades ago, he got an AFI award, Lifetime Achievement Award or something like that. And he got up, and I wrote it down, I've never forgotten. He said, you got to do the preparation and then let her rip. And like some people tend to focus on one half of that equation and not the other half. Some people like to just let her rip. Some people like to just do the preparation. But I think it's both. And I think if you can do both, you know, a wax on, a wax off, a wax on, a wax off, you know, just those exercises, taking those classes, doing those workshops that help you find a technique, so that when you have an opportunity to show people who are in a position to hire what you can do, you can just fall off that cliff and just know that your technique is going to save you. And then again, I think we talked about this in the last question. It's so important not to just blah 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 your way through the words. You've got to connect emotionally to what you're saying. That's crucial. And then last thing, again, and it's kind of like a Venn diagram here, it all kind of interweaves, going back to what Brian Cranston was talking about. Focus on the work, not on the outcome when you're auditioning. Don't think about whether or not this is going to lead to the part. Be thinking about, what does this character want? What happens if he doesn't get it? How is he going about securing what he wants? So those are the tips I'd give for auditioning.
Yeah, that's a good rule for screenwriting and for improv. Like if you're doing Second City Improv or whatever, what do you want out of this scene? What is your goal? What's your motivation? Like all of that is key to sort of giving an emotion to the scene. And one thing I think about is just, you know, you're not going to be perfect for every role. You might walk in, they go, he just doesn't look like the guy, and there's nothing you can do about it, or your voice isn't right, whatever. But I think I heard recently, make a creative choice. First of all, don't just like be bland. Just go, you know what? I'm going to go all in on this choice and see what happens, whatever. And then remember that you might not get this part, but they might go, oh, remember that guy who came in for that? He was really good. Like you're auditioning in front of people who remember you for other things. Like Tom Hiddleston, who plays Loki, originally auditioned for Thor. Wasn't right for that, obviously, but maybe they were like, hey, you know what? He was kind of cool. Let's bring him back.
Had to be 25 years ago, but my agent sent me out for an audition, and I just thought I was wonderful. And I didn't get the part. I got, Phil, no. And he calls me back about 3 or 4 weeks later, And he says, oh, you're booked on that TV series. I said, wow, that took a long time. And he said, no. It's not the part you read for. They liked what you did so much that they wanted to save you for a bigger role. So you've just got to go in there and do your best. And again, focus on the work and not on the outcome, I think.
Yeah. I auditioned years ago for the Lord of the Rings musical. The casting call said, just anybody who can sort of sing. You don't have to be a professional. I was like, all right. So I went in. They were like, okay, sing a song. And I went, it was just some rock song or something. I sang 2 words, like, and they're like, no, thanks. That was it. That wasn't a good story. They never brought me back to play Gandalf or anything, but the show fell apart anyways. So we have a testimonial from one of your students. Now let's take a look.
I suppose if I to say the main reason I will go to Marvin for preparing for auditions and days on set is the very specific way that he will work on a text. Marvin and I work very well together on, he's very good at picking up moments where maybe I might go a bit flat, or there's a moment which isn't filled with something specific. And we discuss it and find something which really works for the character, really works for my interpretation, and comes across on screen.
Yeah, that's Ben. That's the actor I was talking about earlier, who I coached for The Crown, and he took a number of online classes during COVID. Lovely guy and a really good actor.
Wow! And did they shoot The Crown in England or something?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that was all shot in England. And again, we're talking about technology. Worked with him. Wasn't the first time he reached out and said, "Can you coach me for something?" But this was about 2 years ago. And we last worked together maybe a year or 18 months or 2 years before that. And he said, "Look, I'm up for this part on The Crown, and can you coach me?" And I did, and he got the part. So that was great.
Well, see, that's another reason that it's okay that you can tell people, I'm teaching you to fish. You can go off because they'll come back to you. Hey, I'm in this Oscar-winning role or whatever. Can you help me out?
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Ben Warwick was that guy.
Yeah.
Which reminds me of Warwick Davis. Wasn't he in Time Bandits? Anyways. All right. Number 6. When playing a new character, what are 2 questions, very specific, 2 questions a performer should ask to understand how best to play the role?
Yeah. Again, we're sort of covering, it's overlapping here because for me, the 2 questions are, what is this character's core desire? What do they want? What are they fighting for? And that will lead you to the character's objectives and goals. And identifying objectives and goals will give you a clear direction for each scene and a through line for the whole part. Objectives can change even over the course of a scene, depending on circumstances. So there's short-term goals, long-term goals, and objectives. But that, I think, is question: what does my character want? Aaron Sorkin, who I think is my favorite living writer these days, I saw him on a YouTube thing, and he was being interviewed, and the interviewer asked, like, where do you start? And he said, that's where I start. Like, what is this character fighting for? What does he need? And then the second question, which is almost as important as the first, is how do I get what I'm fighting for, right? And what different tactics am I going to use to achieve whatever it is I want? What is my character prepared to sacrifice to get what he or she wants? And in class, I told you earlier, and I went for my master's degree. I don't remember what the course was. I don't remember what the paper I was writing about was for. All I remember is, as part of my research, I came across a study. They put infants who were just starting to see on their backs, and they put simple patterns over the infants' heads, and they put more complex patterns over the babies' heads. Which do you think the infants went for, the simple or the complex?
Complex, more interesting.
They went for the more for, and that was infants. Well, the audience is like the baby in quotation marks. And if you're going to play, I love this woman, I've got to make her marry me. She's got to marry me. I can't live without her. If you're just playing that desperation all the time, that's going to eventually wear thin. But if you play, I need this woman to marry me, I will entertain her, I will amuse her, I will challenge her, I will scare her, I will entice her, I will charm her. If you play those different objectives and use different tools to achieve your objective, I think that makes for a more interesting performance. There are other questions that you can ask that will help you play a role more effectively. What does my character want to change? What are they trying to protect? What are they hiding? What are they afraid of? If you just sort of get off on a riff, you'll just like jazz. You'll just find different stuff, different questions to answer. And when I went to NTS, Douglas Rain, the late great Douglas Rain, who was artistic director of the theater school at the time, said actors have to be detectives. And if you ask yourself these questions over and over and over again, and find all sorts of questions to ask yourself, it can only help with the performance, I think.
Yeah, I think a good exercise would be like take a line and figure out 10 different ways to say it. Say it angry, say it quiet, say it as if you're scared. Like just it might sort of open up for things in your head to go, oh, I didn't realize that's how it could be. With a question you ask yourself, this is my own thought, because I feel like, aren't there things that you're just good at? Like there's stuff you might not be able to do. Like if they call me in because they're looking for big, bald, scary guys or something, I don't think that's going to be ever me. I'm not the big, like I'm sort of the neurotic, like I know my thing. So if you get called in for a role and you're like, I'm not the big, burly, scary guy, do you just sort of figure out, well, how would I play this character and just do your thing? And rather than trying to force fit yourself, because there's going to be somebody who's perfect for that specific thing. So maybe you just do your own thing, you know?
Possibly, yep.
I don't know. Because like I do voice acting and I know they're looking for, if they're looking for somebody like the movie trailer guy, I mean, I can do that voice, but there's people who naturally are the movie trailer guy. So why would they pick me pretending to be that if they actually have that? So my advice to people would be figure out what your thing is, what sort of naturally you fall into, so that when you are performing in a long movie or play, you don't have to think about every line. It just sort of is what you are, I'm no acting teacher, though, so don't listen to anything I'm saying. All right, next question. What is the biggest misconception that theater performers have about acting in film or vice versa? Okay, so yeah, biggest misconception theater performers have about acting in film or vice versa.
It's interesting. Over the years, and I've been teaching on-camera acting since 1998. I've come up with 11 ways in which acting for the camera differs from acting on stage in front of a live audience. I don't want to go into all of them here, but there are crucial differences that it's really important that an actor be aware of and adapts to. Just one of the differences, one of the 11 differences. Theater is a text-driven medium. To be or not to be, that is the question. I am Willie Loman, and you are Biff Loman. I am not a dime a dozen, So, I mean, you could get high school students, which I have seen do Death of a Salesman in Shakespeare. You could do geriatrics, and on a certain level, that material is going to work. The acting for the camera is not a text-driven medium. It relies on something totally different, and it's got to do with having a strong sense of yourself and pushing that sense of yourself forward. I go into this in a lot more detail in my classes and workshops.
Go ahead. Yep.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to say, in terms of the practicality of it, like, is one of them more financially lucrative or an easier life? or is one for a certain type of person, or should people just do both?
Well, I mean, I have the greatest respect for guys like Laurence Olivier and our own Canadian Colin Fior, who bounce back and forth. It's a different experience. There are different rewards. There are different demands between, you know, in terms of acting for the camera and acting on stage. And you've got to find your comfort level. Like some people are just paralyzed in front of a live audience, and so you know you don't have to worry about that so much when you're on a set. But I think that you know, ideally, in the best of all possible worlds, you do both, and you exercise different muscles, different creative and acting muscles, depending on what medium you are working in. But, you know, film and television acting, it really thrives on a much more intimate and subtle style of acting than acting on stage does. And it's a technique. And again, going back to classes, you've really got to learn that technique, because if you don't, you really run the risk of having your career sort of fall off a cliff before it even starts. Because again, the competition is so brutal these days. I mean, when I went to the National Theatre School of Canada, again, before you were born, there were 3 places in the country to get training as an actor. The National Theatre School of Canada, University of Alberta, and the Vancouver Playhouse. Maybe York was starting to get off the ground at the time. And now if I spit out my window, I'm going to hit like 5 places that purport to train actors. So there's this tsunami of theater school and acting school graduates coming down the pipe. And the competition is so much more fierce and brutal than it was 30, 40, 20, 15, 10 years ago. So you've really got to be on your game. And again, going back to the question, you've got to understand and you've got to respect the misconceptions about the differences between acting for the on camera and acting on stage. And as I say, a lot of people will say, well, it's all a matter of scale. It's you got to be bigger on stage. I think you still got to be big emotionally in front of the camera. Physically, you've got to be smaller, but emotionally, you've got to be every bit as big. So it's calibrating, and it's appreciating those differences and finding those differences. And again, to bring it back to classes and workshops, I think that's what classes and workshops ideally offer you and what they're all about.
Yeah, and I think, like, to harken back to what we were talking about earlier, even technology now, like the cameras are so sensitive. It's like ultra HD. The mic can pick up everything. So it'll be like if you move your eyebrow, wow, that's a big thing. But then in Casablanca, it'd be like, "Hello, I am Casablanca." It's
Michael Caine has his wonderful video and book on acting for the camera, and he says in there, the camera reads thoughts. So. I mean, it's really important to understand that. So you don't have to do much. You can just think it on camera in a way that on stage you got to physicalize more. David Rotenberg, the late great acting coach, passed away a couple of years ago. I studied with him for about 12 years, and he said, on stage you physicalize big and think small, and in front of the camera you think big and physicalize small, which I think is a great bit of acting advice.
That is good. And if I were an actor these days with the internet, I would just play with it. I'd post little TikTok or YouTube videos being like, "Hey, this is my pretend audition for this, and what do you guys think?" And get the feedback from the world and experiment. Like, what if my eyebrow goes like that? That'd be so much fun to just, like, if I write a screenplay again, I'm going to post a page a day and read it out to people and get feedback. And that's just me. All right, number 8. What are 2 challenges associated with being an acting teacher / coach?
Well, again, like a Venn diagram, challenge number 1 is to find that impossible balance between spontaneity and technique. If you're out of whack if you're too spontaneous, then you might be out of control. If you are too on top of your technique, you're going to be artificial. So helping students navigate their way through the process to find that balance, I think that's challenge number one. And the other challenge is, and it's another paradox, because it's the wonderful thing about acting is that nobody is going to do a role like you are going to do it, right? So a challenge with being an acting coach is trying to find a way of nurturing every participant, every student's individuality, while at the same time ensuring that they're as effective as they can be because they have their technique down. So those, to me, are the two big challenges.
Yeah, because I've been taking a lot of stand-up classes lately, and I love when the teacher gets to know everybody and he knows what Josh's style is. This is like a Josh kind of joke, and it just makes me feel seen, and also makes me feel like, yeah, here's somebody guiding me towards what I can do. Not everybody's going to be Nate Bargatze, not everybody's going to be this other, Seinfeld. Like so same with acting. Like you get to know your students, go, hey, this is a you thing, and you can sort of nurture what they can do. Yeah. All right, so let's see. Okay, number 9. We're almost there. We got 10 questions. What can Canada's entertainment industry do differently in order to grow? Yes, so here, solve Canada's entertainment industry problems right now.
Yeah, I'm just a teacher and an acting coach and an actor, but like if I were running the government, the Heritage Ministry, or Telefilm Canada, I think we got to stop trying. I think we're not doing a bad job of it. We can't compete with the Americans. I think that what we need to do in the Canadian entertainment industry is just be ourselves. Tell our own stories. Don't try and be someone we're not. Especially with young actors, with the teens I deal with, they're trying to get up in front of the camera and act like their favorite film or television stars, and it doesn't work. It's a $3 bill, right? And I think it's the same. Excuse me. It's the same in terms of the industry. We are who we are. We do the kind of film and television product that we do, and we should just perfect that, hone that, be proud of that, and send that out into the world. Yeah,
I like that. It kind of ties into what we're saying, or what I was saying, about actors. It's like there's something you can do. Be the best you. Like, don't pretend you're Tom Cruise. Yep. Don't pretend we're the U.S.
Small, intimate. Now, unfortunately, it's a hard sell because I mean we're in the era of franchise and amusement park ride type entertainments with cars exploding and planets exploding and spaceships exploding, and and people also like to see the same characters over and over and over again. But history has proven over and over and over again that if you, I mean, I again, having a senior moment here, but I just read, about some wildly successful television series that was turned down by every Star Wars was turned down by every studio in Hollywood, and then George Lucas finally sold it to 20th Century Fox. So again, and that comes back to an earlier point about being resilient and stuff. Yeah, I think you're in this. It's just a fact of this business that you're going to hear no way more than you hear yes. But if you just keep plugging away at it and are confident that you think you've got something that you've got a story that you want to tell, that you think people want to hear, I think if you tell it well enough, you'll find an audience for it. And again, in these days of technology, put a movie on YouTube, charge people $1 to see it. If 1 million people see it, it's. But in terms of the question, yeah, I think what we need to be doing maybe not so much differently, but what we need to be doing is just be proud of who we are and understand that we don't have to model our film and television industry after anybody else's in the world. Look what South Korea did with that
Squid
series.
Games?
Yeah, with Squid Game. I mean, my gosh, no reason why Canada can't have an international hit like that. It's just a question of letting the creative juices run wild, and finding the people who have faith in the project, who will support it financially, and casting it properly with good actors who know their craft.
Who've taken Marvin Karon's classes.
Absolutely.
And I think we've had examples of that, like Schitt's Creek, big international hit, no? And Kim's Convenience.
And there was something quintessentially Canadian about them, while at the same time they touched a nerve in the international community. That is what you want to be doing. That is art. That is success. That is great. And again, I mean, that Schitt's Creek, I don't think you could set that even like in any area of the States or the UK or France or Italy. It wouldn't be the same story. And yet Dan Levy and Eugene Levy, they made it into something that resonated all over the world. So kudos to them.
Yeah. I was just watching a clip of Eugene Levy on Colbert. Showed up on Facebook, and every time they said the show's name, they had to have the logo come up on the screen, so it was clear what shit they were talking about. It was amazing. But yeah, when I was in high school, I did a project comparing American and British humor, and maybe, I don't know if I included Canadian in that, but they are slightly different sensibilities and everything.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And people get bored. There's only so many planets I need to explode, or to see explode, right? So people like stories, they like people. Do something little intimate. I just saw the movie A Real Pain, Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin. It's so small, right? It's like just two guys on a little trip, but it's fascinating. I'd rather watch that than planets explode sometimes.
Yeah.
It's all good. All right. We're heading into the home stretch, or whatever we say. Number 10. We all have mentors, or mentors, however you want to pronounce it. These are the people who give us the hope, inspiration, and the drive to keep going. Who are the people who have been your mentors, and why? And I think we've heard some of them, but
yeah, one I've already mentioned, Ira, who he's now about 5 or 6 years out of breakthrough films and television, but he's been a lifelong friend. And again, I just wish that I'd been as smart enough to follow his advice when I got out of the National Theatre School of Canada. And maybe I would have been further ahead as an actor today.
Wait, what was that advice again?
Again, do not be passive. Create your own work. Create your own work. And
was that as possible back then? Like maybe you did as much as you could?
You know what? Anne-Marie MacDonald she was in Column's class, I believe, 2 years behind me at the National Theatre School of Canada. And that's what Ira was talking about. I mean, Good Night, Desdemona, Good Morning, Juliet. She created that, and she was off to the races. So yeah, I think it was certainly possible even back then, and it's even more possible now. Yeah. With the technology we've been talking about. So he was a huge influence. And then, I was born and raised in Hamilton, and there was a drama teacher by the name of David Booth, who passed away about 3 or 4 years ago. And he left Hamilton, and he ran the Faculty of Education at U of T. He was an internationally renowned arts educator. He taught at OISE. He was there for 30 or 40 years. And just, I mean, if you do a Google search on him, you'll see how influential he was. And I met him when I was 12 years old. And
how did that happen?
Well, he was my grade 8 drama teacher.
Oh, wow.
At Dalewood School. And he was always there, just so incredibly generous and sensitive and smart and funny. And he was a huge, powerful influence, not just on me, but on a lot of drama educators like all over the world. And my teachers at the National Theatre School of Canada, R.H. Thompson came in as a stage combat instructor, and we became good friends. And he actually helped me start Shakespeareans, that charitable nonprofit I was talking about off the top. And he was a real model for how one conducts oneself in the business in terms of, I mean, Robert, I think, had opportunities to go to the States, but he wanted to do it here, and he did, and very, very successfully. And so he was a mentor and a role model. And there've been, I've been blessed. I've been fortunate to have a lot of people who have been who have really helped me along the way, as I hope I help people coming up behind me.
I was going to say, now you're the mentor. The Luke Skywalker has become Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I'm supposed to wrap it up, but you know what? We're at 51 minutes. Maybe I'll bring it up to an even hour.
All right.
Well, I just have one question. Like, what's next for Marvin Karon? Are you like, you know what? I'm retiring. I'm just going to do some teaching. Or are you like, you know what? Have we inspired you this hour? You're like, I'm going to write my own little short film to put on YouTube. I'm going to.
Well, I do. I have tried to write in my time. But I think you have to have a certain baseline of talent, and I don't. And it's sobering to think that when my father was my age, he'd been retired for 11 years already. Mind you, he had a store here on King Street in Hamilton, and never really liked what he did. I love what I do. Yeah. So in terms of what's next, I would just love to continue doing what I'm doing. Both on the Shakespeareans front, that's really, really rewarding working with kids. And got this new website. It's ACTING4THECAMERA.ca, ACTING, the number 4, thecamera.ca. And I have these lovely assistants, Bardia and Jasleen, who helped me put that together, because I know nothing about technology. And so it just went up a couple of months ago. And I'm hoping that with that website as a tool and I can't thank eBoss and Charlene enough for giving me this opportunity to come on and just talk about my ideas for coaching and classes and stuff. I'm hoping that between that, there'll be a little sort of rumble of interest in my group classes, my private classes, my coaching. I'm doing a fair bit of coaching. People are calling. I've got an audition next Thursday, and can you help me? I'll send you the sides and so on and so forth. But I would just love to continue doing what I'm doing. DeAndre Woods, who was the star of Hamilton, who I was talking about, I think it was before we went on air. Was that before we went on air? DeAndre was, he's the star of Hamilton. He was on Broadway until recently, playing Michael Jackson in MJ the Musical. And now he's on tour, and he's coming to Ottawa. I think we were discussing this before we went on the air. And so if you go on my website, he's had all sorts of very kind and generous things to say about working with me. And he wants to get a class off the ground there in New York. He's got like 1 million actor friends, mostly in musical theater, who are interested in making the transition to film and television. And again, we talked earlier on about how you've got to have a technique for that. There are all sorts of differences, and it's important to understand those differences. So once he gets off the road in the spring, the plan is to perhaps go back to New York and maybe run a few classes there, and maybe back to England. I haven't been to England since COVID, but I was offering classes out of the Actors Centre, the professional development wing of the British Actors Union. Now, it's my understanding, I think that went down a couple of years ago, but there are other places to go where I perhaps could teach. So and then I hope my agent will get me out to audition for stuff. I just shot an episode of Accused, a Fox series in November, which was a lot of fun, working with Milan Chelos. I'm getting his name all screwed up. Wonderful director who I worked with I think 40 years ago. He moved to California, And then he was up here shooting this episode of Accused, and he hired me, and it was great reconnecting with him. So I hope to do more of that and more coaching. And I play guitar.
Oh, I play guitar too. We should duet.
I'm writing songs, and so that's kind of fun. So just trying to stay creative and active and busy, and that's what the future hopefully looks like for Marvin Karon.
All right, I got one little idea for you, because my Instagram name, I'm trying to rebrand myself as Spark the Genius. I don't know if you like that name, but and what I do is I am Spark the Genius, but I will also spark the genius in you. So here's my idea for you. And maybe you need like a younger person to help you with the YouTube stuff or whatever. But if you could react to scenes in movies and TVs and then give your feedback on them, be like, oh, I like how he did this, or I would have done that. I think that would really boost your acting business. There's this band teacher on YouTube that sometimes I see, and he reacts to songs. Like he'll be like, play a song, go, oh, I love this bass line. Oh, I love how the woman sings this or whatever. People love that stuff. And so I'm sure it builds his brand. People want to go to him because he's the celebrity. So if you're the acting guy that's sort of commenting, you could look at Casablanca and say that it's interesting how they did that. Or you could talk about your own thing. Here was me in The Accused, and this is why I made that choice. I think that'd be an interesting thing for you if you ever want to do that. And maybe somebody can show you how to have a little thing in the screen on the corner so they can see what you're reacting to.
Excellent. Good idea.
All right. Well, there we go. Marvin, thank you for joining us. You've been an amazing influence to so many actors, including myself now. And I am Josh RACHLIS. And thanks, everyone, for watching Entertainment 411.
Thank you. Thank you.